Respect is never requested. It's assigned, and here's how people decide whether you deserve it. Most people believe respect is something you earn by being good, by being polite, by being useful, by proving you have good intentions. From childhood, we are taught that if we behave well, people will naturally value us. But real life does not run on moral grading, it runs on social perception. People do not respond to what is in your heart, they respond to what your behavior communicates. This is the first uncomfortable truth Machiavelli understood clearly. Power is not built on inner virtue alone, but on outward signals. Human beings are not objective judges of character. They are quick interpreters of status. They subconsciously scan for confidence, independence, and strength. If your actions signal uncertainty, fear of rejection, or dependence on approval, people adjust their treatment of you accordingly. Not because they are cruel, but because social hierarchies form automatically. This is why so many capable, intelligent, and well-meaning people feel invisible. They do everything right and still get ignored, talked over, or undervalued. Their mistake is not lack of talent. It is misunderstanding how respect is generated. Respect is not a moral reward. It is a psychological response. It emerges when others sense that you are not easily shaken, not easily controlled, and not easily replaced. The world does not ask whether you deserve respect ethically. It asks whether you appear strong enough to command it socially. This is where being nice begins to backfire. Niceness, when excessive, is not interpreted as kindness. It is interpreted as insecurity. Over-apologizing, over-explaining, over-giving, and constantly accommodating others does not make you admirable. It makes you predictable, and predictability reduces status. When you rush to please, you reveal that their approval matters more to you than your own standards. Without realizing it, you teach people that your time, energy, and boundaries are cheap. You train them to take you for granted. Machiavelli warned that generosity without limits destroys authority, not because generosity is wrong, but because unlimited generosity creates dependence on being liked. Once your behavior revolves around keeping others comfortable, you lose leverage. The more you chase acceptance, the more you reveal that you fear losing it. And the moment people sense that you need their approval, the balance of power tilts away from you. This is the hidden mechanism behind social respect. People do not consciously think, "This person is weak, I will disrespect them." It happens automatically. Human beings are wired to read confidence and self-control as indicators of leadership. When someone constantly seeks reassurance, explains themselves unnecessarily, or avoids conflict at all costs, they signal that they do not trust their own position. And if you do not trust your position, others will not either. Machiavelli's most misunderstood insight is not about cruelty. It is about perception. He observed that authority is not created by force alone, but by distance, not emotional coldness, but controlled access. Power grows where availability is limited. What is scarce is valued. What is constant is ignored. This rule applies far beyond politics. It governs everyday human interaction. When someone is always reachable, always agreeable, always accommodating, they become background noise. Their presence loses weight. But when someone is measured, selective, and self-directed, others pay attention, not because they are manipulative, but because they appear self-contained. Distance creates gravity. Machiavelli understood that familiarity, when excessive, erodes status. The more people feel they fully understand you, the less authority you carry. Mystery is not deception. It is simply not revealing everything. When you do not immediately explain yourself, you force others to interpret your actions rather than dismiss them. When you are not constantly available, your presence becomes something that must be earned rather than assumed. This is why people who seem calm and reserved often command rooms without speaking much. They do not dominate with noise. They dominate with composure. They're silent signals that they do not need to perform for approval. That independence itself becomes power. You can see this dynamic clearly in the modern workplace. The employee who constantly tries to be liked is rarely respected. They answer emails instantly. They take on every task. They apologize for having opinions. They overwork to prove their value. Ironically, this makes their value appear lower. They seem replaceable because they present themselves as endlessly available. Meanwhile, the colleague who speaks less but with clarity, who does not rush to justify every decision, who sets boundaries around their time, is treated differently. Their words carry more weight. Their presence feels more substantial. Managers subconsciously read this as leadership material, not because they are more skilled, but because they appear more stable. Calmness under pressure signals control. Control signals authority. Authority attracts respect. This is not about arrogance. It is about self-command. The person who does not panic for approval appears reliable. The person who does not overshare appears grounded. The person who can say no appears valuable. The same psychology governs dating and relationships. People often believe attraction grows through constant pursuit, through constant texting, through constant reassurance. But emotional overexposure creates the opposite effect. When someone centers their entire emotional world around another person, they become less attractive, not more. Not because care is unattractive, but because dependency is. Boundaries create desire. When someone has a full life, clear standards, and emotional stability, their attention feels meaningful. When someone gives unlimited access, their attention feels cheap. Machiavelli would recognize this instantly. Scarcity increases perceived value. When you are not afraid to walk away from poor treatment, your presence carries weight. When you tolerate anything to avoid losing someone, your position collapses. Healthy distance is not manipulation. It is self-respect made visible. It communicates that your identity is not negotiable. You invite others into your life, you do not beg them to stay. Leadership functions on exactly the same rule. Leaders who chase popularity lose authority. When a leader fears being disliked, they avoid hard decisions. They blur boundaries. They sacrifice structure for approval. Over time, people stop trusting their direction. Machiavelli warned that rulers who try to be loved at all costs eventually become despised because they appear weak. Effective leaders maintain emotional control. They speak deliberately. They do not overreact. They enforce standards consistently. This creates psychological safety. People respect leaders who seem internally anchored, not emotionally reactive. Authority does not come from being harsh. It comes from being unshakable. The deeper pattern beneath all these examples is simple. People respect those who govern themselves. Every time you ignore your own boundaries to keep others comfortable, you give power away. Every time you tolerate disrespect to avoid conflict, you train people to see you as negotiable. Every time you over-explain to justify your existence, you signal that your position is uncertain. Power is not seized through aggression. It is expressed through self-control. Machiavelli understood that the strongest form of power is not force, but independence. When you are emotionally self-sufficient, others must adjust to you. When you are emotionally dependent, you must adjust to them. Respect flows toward the person who appears least controlled by external validation. This is why the most respected individuals are often the least needy. They are not the loudest. They are not the most aggressive. They are the most internally stable. They do not chase attention. They attract it. They do not beg for approval. They become selective about where they give it. When people sense that your time, energy, and presence are not endlessly available, they treat them with care. When they feel they could lose access to you, your value rises, not because you threaten them, but because your standards are real. This is the paradox Machiavelli revealed. Respect grows when you stop asking for it. The more you chase validation, the more you communicate insecurity. The moment you stop performing for approval and start operating from self-command, people recalibrate their behavior around you. You do not demand better treatment. You make poor treatment incompatible with your presence. When you stop explaining your worth, others begin calculating it themselves. That is how respect is assigned. Respect is shaped by what you tolerate and what you walk away from. The moment you stop chasing approval and start mastering yourself, everything changes. If this gave you a new perspective, like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.